Welcome to the ANEW Body Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogrammed Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. And Chantal Donnelly, physical therapist and author of Settled, How to Find Calm in a Stress-Inducing World. Here at City Club Los Angeles, we follow our guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Hello and welcome to the ANEW Body Insight Podcast at City Club Los Angeles. I am Dr. Supatra Tovar, and sadly we do not have Chantal Donnelly with us, so I am flying solo today and we are thinking of her and wishing her well. I am super excited to have success coach and Dancing in the Kitchen TV star, Ashley Miers, here with us today. Yay!
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yay! I'm going to read a little bit about Ashley and then we'll get right into our questions. Ashley Miers is a sought-after success coach who helps women find freedom from depression naturally without buying into the lie that they are broken, so that they can love themselves, live a life of joy and love, and ultimately thrive. At the top of 2024, Ashley began the release of her new YouTube cooking show, Dancing in the Kitchen, which I'm going to be on and I'm very excited about, where she and co-host Elizabeth Russo utilize music and food as powerful tools for elevating mood and supporting mental health and well-being overall. In her online group coaching program, Transcend the Turbulence, Ashley guides a worldwide community of heart-centered clients to make impactful health and mindset changes. Drawing upon Ashley's own recovery experience, her degree in neuroscience, and blending skills and concepts from Dialectical Behavior Therapy and Kundalini Yoga. The foundation of the TTT program involves implementing self-care strategies to support self-esteem and success, and from there, clients progress to setting and fulfilling transformative life goals so that they can finally and fully step into their purpose, power, and potential. Ashley is a two-time speaker at the Mental Health America Annual Conference, a NAMI blog contributor, and a contributing author to the Entrepreneur's Book of Wisdom, an anthology by Holland Publishing. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you. Again, I'm happy to be here, and that is quite the introduction.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You have quite the bio, so you've got a lot going on here. And as I have learned from you, you have had quite a journey from your own personal struggles with mental health to becoming this beacon of hope and recovery, and that is really incredibly inspiring to me. Can you share what the turning point was for you in deciding to commit to recovery and holistic health?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's kind of two answers to this for me. One being that the pain of the dysfunction had to become greater than the pain or discomfort of facing my fears and doing the work that it took to recover. Like, I had to have enough motivation to be able to get through the resistance that I had to my own recovery. Mm-hmm. And when staying in the darkness became more painful and less tolerable than doing what it took to recover, facing my fears, getting honest with myself and others, resisting my urges, self-harm or substance abuse, instead of acting on them, then that was a really key factor for me. And another thing for me was honestly motherhood. I knew that I wanted to be a wife and a mom one day, and I knew that if I was harming myself in any way, that I couldn't be a healthy mother. And if I couldn't stay sober, if I couldn't take care of myself, then I obviously couldn't be pregnant and, expose a baby to that.
Of course.
So that's one of the reasons, that's probably, the reason why one of my favorite parts about what I do with my coaching clients is helping them set those transformative goals. Because I feel like most of the women that come to me they are in some way or another not aligned with their truth and their purpose. Like in some way, they're selling themselves short, or they're kind of throwing themselves under the bus. Maybe they're taking care of everybody else and they're not taking care of themselves.
Right.
And they are somehow sort of neglecting or betraying some aspect of themselves that really needs to be lived into.
Mm-hmm.
And so I help them get clear on what that is, what actually really lights you up. If nobody was judging you, if nothing was stopping you, like, what would the dream be?
Mm.
Okay, let's figure out a plan. Let's reverse engineer that and make a plan so that you can follow to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that in my experience, the depression that women are experiencing when they come to me tends to be a result of them being out of alignment with that purpose. And it's like the gap, the distance between who they actually want to be, where they actually want to be, and where they're at right now, right? The pain of that gap.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, wanting to become a mother was something that I could like pull myself forward to, something that I could care enough about to follow, and again, to kind of get me through the discomfort of what it took to actually change.
Right. To the extent that you feel comfortable, can you give us an idea of what that looked like for you when you were in the midst of it? If you don't mind.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I had kind of like every vice and dysfunction that you could almost have. I had an eating disorder. I self-harmed. I was suicidal. I had multiple suicide attempts. I abused substances. What else did I do? Toxic relationships. I mean, kind of ran the gamut.
Wow.
But it ultimately all just stemmed from not being able to own my own worth, like to love myself enough to be able to have that deserving power of like, I deserve better than this. And even if somebody else is hurting me, if I'm feeling hurt by their behavior, I can love myself enough to choose not to participate in it.
Right.
Versus like, I need them to change for me to be okay. Right. It's a very big difference. So it looked bad. It looked like I would use cocaine because I'd wake up depressed every morning, and it would like help me get up and get out of bed. And at a certain point in my life, I was isolating completely and would just stay in my apartment and make music and like do drugs. And then I never really liked alcohol that much. But I would drink to just pass out, to just kind of seek that oblivion and unconsciousness. So I had all kinds of unhealthy behaviors.
Right.
And at a certain point, that all became more painful than what it took to make it stop.
Absolutely. And I think once you have the benefit of time, you gain a lot of insight as to why and how you got to where you were. With that insight, do you have that answer of why and how you got there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's going to continue throughout my life to be like layers of an onion that I'm always unpeeling and kind of like discovering deeper meaning. But yes, like the traumatic things that I went through in my life that made me feel unlovable, that made me feel safe. And I think it's so fascinating when those patterns like come to our conscious awareness. And I just had one the other day where I was realizing like, oh, okay. When I was a kid, when I would ask for help, I would be told I was the problem and like the help wouldn't come, right? And so then looking at my life and being like, what are the ways that I replay this? What are the ways this trauma has replayed in my life? And how have I continued to find myself or put myself in situations where I am trying to ask for help or support, but asking the wrong people. And, they're telling me I'm the problem. And finally reaching a point where I have enough trust in my own judgment and my own perception to be like, no, actually, I am seeing things clearly. I can discern the truth for myself, what my truth is. And I can choose to not believe when other people are trying to sort of like pigeonhole me into you're the problem versus like, no, something's actually really wrong with what's going on here. And I can stand strong in that and set a boundary.
Wow. Did you seek help yourself?
I did at a certain point. Like in 2012, I started going to AA meetings and I would go to an AA meeting and go home and use and go to an AA meeting the next day and go home and use. And that was really demoralizing. I probably did that for, I don't even know. It might have been like a year.
Wow.
And I don't think I ever got more than a day, 2, 3 days tops. And then I ended up moving to Nashville in 2013, and I was able to finally stop doing the cocaine because I wasn't going to ask anybody for it. And so I was able to like break that. But then I was still drinking alcohol. I was like smoking cigarettes at that point, which was something like I never thought I would do. But I'd reached a place in my life where I was just in so much despair and like low self-worth that it was like nothing matters. What's it matter anymore?
Yeah.
And I didn't even like cigarettes. Like my pattern with cigarettes was like I would smoke one and hate myself and then feel like I should smoke another one. Like,
Well, it's the addiction. And then I think it's, if you could equate it to something, I think it's a slow way to kill yourself, essentially. Right. I think that it comes from a place of low self-esteem and low self-worth. And, you know, how did you end up quitting cigarettes?
In 2014, I moved back to LA, and I just reached a point one day, and I don't even know. It's hard to say like what the breaking point was that day, but I share this with my coaching clients. It's sort of part of the story I share with them about what my experience was. I remember sitting in this armchair and just being like, I'm done, like no more.
Yep.
And it was so intense that I don't know what you want to call it. Like if it was a Kundalini awakening, if it was a psychotic break, if it was, I don't know, but I had a really crazy week. And it started with that moment in that armchair and drawing this line and being like, I'm done. And then I forced myself to like get up and take a shower because all I wanted to do was go back to bed. And so I was doing this contrary action of like, but I'm not going back to bed. No, I'm not letting this control me anymore.
Wow.
And I got in the shower and I literally had to talk to myself out loud to drown out the subconscious voice that was just telling me to stop and go back to bed. And every time I would stop speaking out loud, I would just find myself like standing frozen in the shower, almost like catatonic. And then I'd kind of recognize it and be like, I am picking up the shampoo. I am putting the shampoo in my hand. I am rubbing my hands together. And I mean, I'm sure it looked insane. It felt insane. But I had to have something loud enough to weigh out that voice that was telling me to like give up and stop and continue the pattern I'd been in for so many years. And then I started going to AA again. And that was the first time I got like real sobriety. I was sober for, say, like 14 and a half months.
Wonderful.
And that first week, like I couldn't sleep. Like it was really wild, but it felt like a huge psychic shift had happened and something just broke open. And eventually that kind of faded. And it was almost like, the other way I describe it is that me, like this person that's sitting in front of you today, was like in the back seat of the car, and there was this like terrified, out of control little girl at the wheel.
Exactly. I was just seeing two sides of yourself warring with each other. And the one that won, how would you describe that side?
The adult. The adult was like, you are not driving the car. Get in the back seat where you belong. I'm taking over and I'm keeping us safe.
Wow. And that's the mom in you, I think, coming out as well. So and probably just wanting to emerge. I am so glad for that, for you.
Thank you.
And that you have, you know, I don't like that you've gone through that journey, but I think that journey informs you and has kind of created this mission for you, which is really beautiful. Now, you have a very extensive background in neuroscience, philosophy, nutrition, music, all sorts of different areas. How do you integrate these disciplines into your coaching and your speaking engagements to address both mental and physical aspects of health?
So what I feel like I do is I look for what is the need, right? Like I've come to find that I can be overwhelming if I just kind of like open the floodgates. So what I try to do is look for the need of the person or the people that are in front of me, and then draw from whatever I know, whatever discipline seems relevant, and try to meet that need to the best of my ability. So if somebody's coming to me and, you know, maybe they're really resistant to one thing, then I'm going to pay attention to that and I don't want to trigger their defenses and make them close up and not be receptive.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to try to like bring that piece in right now.
Mhm.
I'm always kind of looking for like, what can this person hear right now?
Mhm.
Where is like the crack where the light can get in?
Yeah.
And let me like speak to that. And what I find is that like as people feel safe and they trust and they start to like address things and get a sense of accomplishment from that, then they become receptive to a little bit more.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's sort of a circuitous answer, I suppose, but, you know, all of those various disciplines can be useful just depending on
Oh, yeah.
what someone's interested in, what they're receptive to, what they're not receptive to.
Oh, I relate completely. I mean, I have the psychology background, the dietetics background, fitness background, and I find that it's really about motivational interviewing in the beginning and just trying to figure out, like, you know, what are they ready for? What are they open to? And no one is the same. They're all, you know, coming from different backgrounds and, you know, different areas of the country and all of that. And I think having a lot that you can pull from and integrate into your approach is really helpful. How do your clients receive that?
I think they love it. Like, my coaching calls are my clients rave about them. Like, that is the thing that they're just like, this is such an amazing experience. And oftentimes they're like trepidatious when they come to it because, you know, the thing that I find a lot of them have in common is this idea that they're all alone. They're the only person that's like this. Like, they're a weirdo, they're a freak, they're, you know, whatever, because there's so much stigma about mental health. It's not something we can talk about. And so many people have that idea that they've been enculturated with.
Yeah.
And so they come to these group coaching calls, and at first it's like, I'm not comfortable sharing my vulnerability. And then they realize what a safe and sacred space it is, and that we just dive into whatever is relevant for any given person. And then I even notice like a certain amount of synchronicity that happens where like something I'll be going through in my personal life will be relevant to something that somebody brings up on a coaching call. And some experience that I've recently had will allow me to speak to what they're going through in an informed way. And it's a really beautiful synergy that it feels bigger than.
Yes. It even goes beyond, you know, these like neuroscience, philosophy, nutrition. You also have the use of various therapies like EMDR, DBT, Kundalini Yoga. Tell me about those practices and how they complement your coaching.
Absolutely. So I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach, so I don't actually practice EMDR with my clients. I do teach them DBT skills, but with the disclaimer that I'm not a DBT therapist. This doesn't substitute for like a DBT program.
Right.
But those skills have been immensely useful to me. And I find a lot of parallels between Kundalini and DBT. So I guess I'll start with EMDR, and just how powerful it is to get into the body and to process emotions and the somatic aspect of healing, because we can be in our heads and talk and analyze and be intellectual about it and even understand it. But there's still that subconscious and somatic element that if it's not addressed and it's not resolved, then like our nervous system is running us without our awareness.
Exactly.
So EMDR is powerful for that. And I recommend that to people to like, you know, we've got to get into our feelings and actually feel them. And DBT and also Kundalini, I feel for me, one of the main benefits has been learning distress tolerance.
Yes.
Because I feel like that was the thing that really tripped me up when I was younger. Like, I couldn't tolerate feeling my feelings. I couldn't tolerate the distress of how intense my feelings were. And learning to sit with that and tolerate it then gave me the ability to not react to it unconsciously. Like, I could have a bit of a buffer, have the mindfulness component as well, to sit with it and choose what was my response going to be. And there's so much to DBT, so there's a lot to love, but you know, it's about not making things worse. So can you sit with something and either just not react to it in a way that's going to make it worse, or ideally, can you make a choice that's actually going to start moving you toward healing or making things better?
Right. And just to interject, for those that don't know DBT, it's Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, and it was created by Marsha Linehan, who's a very famous therapist who is borderline, has diagnosed borderline personality disorder. So it was originally created to help people with that personality disorder function and operate in the best way that they can. So there's all sorts of skills like mindfulness, working on interpersonal relationships. So that's a big one for people who suffer from borderline personality disorder. There's the mindfulness piece. There's all sorts of like skills. It's a very manualized treatment. So that's what she's saying is, to practice that, Marsha Linehan encourages people to be certified in it and to follow this certain protocol. But all of us therapists, we draw a lot of, use from her interventions, a lot of her worksheets and things that you do with clients. So they're very, very helpful for anyone who's suffering from something very difficult that they're just trying to work through in their lives.
Yeah. Well, and as a mom, these are things that I teach my kids now, because I truly believe that if we all learned these kinds of coping skills as children, we would live in a radically, radically different world.
Absolutely.
So in terms of Kundalini and DBT, I feel like Kundalini was an active practice for me with the distress tolerance, because if you're getting into a pose that's really uncomfortable and you're sitting there and you're enduring it for X number of minutes, your mind is going to kick up all this stuff, like this hurts, I shouldn't do it. Maybe I'm actually hurting myself. This is stupid. Why'd I sign up for this in the first place? Like whatever the chatter is, right? And so you have the opportunity to just stay in the discomfort and witness the chatter. And by practicing that and having an experience of transcending it, overcoming it, not letting it dictate your behavior, you then can take that experience out into the rest of your life and apply it in other areas. Like, let's say I'm having a difficult argument and I really just want to yell at this person. Oh, I recognize that I'm having that intense sensation, that urge to yell. I can tolerate it and I can choose whether to engage in it or not.
Right.
And by doing that, I can direct my experience. It's like a fork in the road. And if I yell at the person, it's probably going to take me down a route I don't want to go. If I am able to tolerate the distress and make a better choice, I'm going to have a different outcome. And over time, those outcomes repeated consistently, I'm going to have a different life.
I love that. And give our audience a picture of Kundalini Yoga for those who don't know exactly what that is.
So Kundalini Yoga is kind of like the kooky kind of yoga. Most people are more familiar with like vinyasa yoga, flow yoga. You go in and you do a series
Ashtanga.
of poses. Yeah. Kundalini has mantra and it has breath work.
I love mantras. Love.
Well, it's so interesting. They teach in yogic philosophy that the tongue is actually activating acupressure points in the palate that then translate to like neural activity. And that it also releases like a cascade of endocrine system, like hormones and neurotransmitters. And it's fascinating to learn. And I don't think that the research has probably really been done to catch up with the philosophy from the yoga point of view, but fascinating ideas. And so Kundalini might look like just sitting there and doing a mudra, which is, what I'm doing with my hands here. There's lots of different kinds of mudras. One of my favorites is just sort of like a silly party trick, but like this thing.
Oh, wow. For those listening, she's, playing with her fingers and pressing her fingers together.
And then the various mudras and the various chants have certain meanings that are associated with them. So there's one, where you hit your hands together and you chant HUD, and you're chanting it from your solar plexus, and it's about power. Yes. And so I had a dear friend who got me into Kundalini, who has passed now, but he was an epic teacher. And he would like encourage us to like really show up in your power and like yell it.
Wow.
Right. And so you have an opportunity to go into a space and practice doing these things.
Wonderful. That
might not feel comfortable or normal in your day-to-day life. And I mean, people will scream in Kundalini classes, they'll laugh, they'll like, anything goes.
That's great.
But it's a safe space to do that. And so by allowing yourself that freedom, you're sort of letting go of those restrictions and that rigidity that holds so much of us in, of like, this is inappropriate, I can't do this, or I'm not supposed to speak up. You're actually actively practicing using your voice and your power. And then that translates into the way that you show up in your life.
Oh, I love that. And I love how you use all of those disciplines to help them find their path. And I think that's really powerful when we actually visualize where we want to go as opposed to what we're afraid that is going to happen. And I do that a lot with my clients. They always go to the worst case scenario. And I try to ask them, well, what's the best case scenario? What would you actually really like to do? And then you give them, something that they can anchor to and work towards. I like how you say you kind of work backwards to get there. Amazing. You have such a background that is, I just think, really unique. And on top of that, you're a singer and a musician, and you have an amazing voice.
Thank you.
Tell us about that. How has that enhanced your life? When did you start performing music? How does it continue to be a part of your life even through this work?
Yeah. So music is kind of funny for me. Like, my family on my mom's side owned a nightclub in Nebraska that was like Nebraska famous. My my grandfather is in like the Nebraska Hall of Fame. And so I had this really strange, like atypical experience as a little kid in the 80s of like being let in the velvet rope and like taken to the back office and like, but somehow I grew up thinking like music wasn't like a career that you actually did. And like, I don't know why I thought that. I don't know if it was sort of like my family was the business, they were the business owners. And so like the bands were, I don't know. But I took piano lessons my whole life. I did like singing in school. And then when I was a teenager, I got a guitar. I wanted an electric guitar. My family got me an acoustic. And
they're like, it's quieter.
Yeah. And then I took a couple lessons, but the teacher, I just wasn't really vibing. He was, not that I don't like classic rock, because I do, but I was like a 13-year-old girl, so probably like Spice Girls or something would have been more up my alley at the time. So I took a couple lessons and wasn't really feeling it, but then I would just stay in my room and I'd be hearing like lyrics in my head and I wanted to make songs, so I taught myself to play guitar just by like messing around until I heard what I wanted to put underneath the words. And so I started writing songs that way. And then I went to college, and my first quarter of college, I was overly ambitious and took too many credits. And I took this creative expression class that was supposed to be like a general requirement. And they gave us this music software that was called Acid that nobody uses anymore. But I got that software and then realized like, oh, I'm not going to be able to keep my grades up if I take this many classes. So I dropped the class. But then I would be late to class the entire rest of my college career, because I would be in my dorm room writing songs.
Oh, awesome.
But still was like, but that's not a job. That's just what I love to do. And then I moved to LA after college, which was kind of funny too, because I studied neuroscience in college and like biology, communication, nutrition, philosophy. And then I was like, but what would I want to do for a job? I don't really want to sit at a desk. And I was like, I could act. I can do that. I see what's happening on the TV here. I'd like, that sounds like a great, like different every day. Like I get to be fit and healthy. That's part of the requirement. Like there was a lot to like. So I moved here for that. And then my boyfriend at the time like outed me at a Hollywood party to some music industry people and was like, she writes songs. And I was like, don't tell, but do. And they're like, we want to hear them. So I sent this like really crappy sound recorder recording of me like playing guitar. And the woman who was interested was the head of Los Angeles Women in Music at the time.
Cool.
And she was like, you're good. You should come play our showcase. And I was like, I never performed in front of people. So then I started doing open mics. And that like one thing just started leading to another with music. And it was very much like, it just felt meant to be. And I would say in terms of like my mental health, that music was like my diary. It was my way to process. And that was challenging because getting up on stage and sharing that felt so vulnerable. Yeah. But there was this part of me that like, even though I was terrified, really wanted to be seen, I think. And then also the aspect of like writing a song kind of felt like a different part of myself, a higher part of myself communicating with me, and like the reflection of a mirror almost, where once I had written the song and it was outside of me and then I'd like recorded it and I could listen back to it, then I could gain perspective and like actually understand what I was feeling, right? And like it's been very powerful for me.
Wow. And so you use this in Dancing in the Kitchen and anywhere else with your coaching clients?
I don't really use my music in the coaching program per se. I mean, I'll share anecdotes. I've thought about maybe at some point experimenting with offering something around that for people. I certainly think that art and music are so therapeutic and just creative expression. So I encourage creativity and people pursuing whatever creative pursuit like lights them up.
Yes.
But yeah, I write and record songs. I release them. We shop them for, sync licensing and that sort of thing. And I perform as well. So I'll do like motivational speaking and perform to sort of illustrate whatever topic I'm speaking about. If I'm speaking about my recovery journey, I might do a few songs that actually spotlight moments from that experience.
Beautiful.
And I heard a really beautiful quote, who I don't know who to attribute it to, but this idea that music makes you feel a thought. And so it's one thing to talk about things, but kind of like that somatic component we were talking about earlier, music can evoke a visceral emotional experience. It can be a catharsis. It can help you process.
Absolutely.
So I feel like combining that intellectual aspect, the story, with the music that can evoke the emotion is a really powerful healing modality.
Yeah, I see another program coming up for you. I think that would be so powerful. Well, I'm going to pick your brain some more, but we are out of time for this half of this episode. But Ashley, you are a phenom, and I can't wait to join you and interview again for the next half. But for now, thank you so much for joining us. Tune in next week for the second half of this exciting interview with success coach and Dancing in the Kitchen TV star, Ashley Miers.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Body Insight Podcast. Please remember, the content shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Body Insight Podcast tab. Follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.